gorgeous.
There we
Perfect.
go.
Okay. All right. So let me pull up my questions right quick. All right. So do you want to start with the first one? Like tell a little bit about so I
Sure,
can like give a bio in my project.
sure,
So
sure,
okay.
sure, sure. Um, well, I am retired. I had a career in community development finance and rural economic development. So I spent my career sort of looking at financing for uh, individuals and businesses that couldn't find financing from traditional sources. And since I was little, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and um, every every time we would drive downtown, we'd drive by all these neighborhoods where the housing was falling down or decrepit, and I would always think, why can't why can't we do something about those houses? So, for whatever reason, it's just always interested me and been uh, a concern. I just for me that there isn't people don't have good places to live, which seems
Yeah.
like such a fundamental right and a fundamental need. So when I retired, I got more involved with affordable housing, and that happened through it continues to be through an organization called Durham Can, and Can is um, uh, re- a is a community organization that's part of a national network of organizations that seek to give average people power and the ability to influence decision makers on a whole range of issues. And Duke Memorial, where I go to church, is one of the members of Durham Can. And Durham Can, because housing is such a crisis and a big issue in Durham, Durham Can has made affordable housing one of its topics for a long time. And so I've been gotten more and more involved in in those efforts. And I'm now the co-chair of the Affordable Housing Action Team for Can. So my job is to help Can identify areas to pursue in affordable housing and think about how to put together a campaign that would get a reaction or some action from decision makers to build more affordable housing. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. So I'm not an expert, I'm an advocate, um, but I've learned I've learned enough to be dangerous, I would say, and
Very good.
spend a lot of time thinking about how to bring different organizations together to advocate for affordable housing and how to get the powers that be to do more. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that I've always been impressed with everything that you do and how you manage everything. Like I don't I don't get it, but I'll get to that point one day.
well, and also I'm retired, so
Yeah.
I don't have a 9 to 5 job, and I'm not going to school, and my kids are grown, so I have time to do it.
Didn't you used to be a realtor as well, or still are a realtor? Like, didn't you
No,
get
I've
your real?
never been involved in real estate except as a renter and then as a homeowner.
I
So
thought you had your real estate license for some reason. I didn't know.
no.
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Um, increase into so on when you're doing the action committee on housing, what and
Hmm.
you're talking with people in other organizations like member institutions, what is what would you say is the biggest concern facing the housing shortage? Meaning, what is the biggest barrier to people getting
Yeah,
into
yeah.
affordable housing?
Um, that's a really big question, and has a lot of different there's a lot of different causes to it, and I don't pretend to know them all, but I can give you some sense of what I think is going on. The first thing to say is that Can every couple of years, Can does a big listening session with all of its member organizations and then other constituents, other people, other residents of Durham. and we talked to about 2,000 people this last time around, and affordable housing was the number one issue that came up across the board. So it's a concern for and obviously it's a concern for the community more broadly. And I think what's happened with Durham is that over the last probably 10 years in particular, Durham has seen a real influx of, as the city has grown and as the Triangle has become more of a desirable place for big companies to have have headquarters or facilities. Durham has become a very affordable and desirable place for private developers to build housing. So you've certainly seen it around town. There have been 3 to 4 thousand new units, and it may be more than that of market rate housing that have gone up, and those have been filled by the huge number of people with good paying jobs or high paying jobs who are moving to Durham to work in at Google or to work at Fidelity or to work at biopharma or biotech companies in Research Triangle. And Durham was always kind of the low income stepchild in the Triangle. Raleigh and Chapel Hill were both more expensive and sort of fancier cities. Durham was very sort of underdeveloped. And as this influx of people has happened, developers have been able to buy land cheaply in Durham. That's not true anymore, but for a long time they were able to buy land cheaply and build and then charge high rents, which has been a great boon for developers. There are a number of reasons why affordable housing has become a crisis. One is that when you have that kind of influx of income and wealth, it has the effect of driving up both prices for um, owner-occupied homes, houses that people own, and rental housing. And so property taxes go up, the cost of housing goes up. And if you're living in a house and you are living on Social Security and you've been in your house for 20 years and your property taxes go up by they double or they go up by a third, or even if they go up just by $1,000, that's a serious hit to your budget. And so people who have always been able to live in Durham and have low housing prices all of a sudden have seen their property taxes increase. That puts pressure on families with low income. And you say, well, your house is worth more, so you could go ahead and sell it and you could earn a lot, but then you can't buy another house in Durham. It's too expensive to buy houses here for just the same reason. So that's been one effect, and it's basically become almost impossible for someone who makes less than sort of the average area median income in Durham is an AMI is a term that gets used a lot. So if you're less than 100% AMI, it's very hard to buy a house in Durham. Yeah, I don't know if you've tried yourself, but it's
No,
very
not yet.
very expensive. And there are organizations like Habitat for Humanity and the Durham Community Land Trust, which are trying to provide affordable places to live for people who don't make a lot of money. But those are sort of drops in the bucket compared to the need. I think I just was looking at a stat. There are statewide, and this is all of North Carolina, so obviously not just Durham alone, but there are 44,000 people who are on the waiting list for affordable housing. That's probably at housing authorities and at other places that are kept affordable.
And
Um, so there's been all this additional pressure. Then the other thing that's happened is that there's been really since Ronald Reagan, there's been a slow federal divestment from support for housing for people who are of low or moderate income. So the federal government has basically made it very hard for local governments, has stopped providing money for local governments to be able to provide housing. Not stopped is not the right word, but that money has not kept pace with inflation. It hasn't kept pace with population growth, and so local municipalities and local counties have to do more and more with their budgets to support the local housing authority, the Durham Housing Authority, for example. And that's a really big job as all those housing authority units age and require more and more maintenance. The city doesn't have more and more money to keep them up. And so then you have to build new units. The other thing that's happened is that um, there's a really important program called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which allows private investors, banks, and individuals and insurance companies to buy tax credits, get a tax benefit, and put money into affordable housing. That program started in 1987 and sort of was finally locked in 1993. And nationwide this year, it provides about $10 billion in tax credits. And that money gets used to help subsidize the building of affordable housing. The really basic thing about real estate is you can get money to build real estate as long as there's a way to pay back that loan or that investment. And if you have market rate housing, and you want to pay back a project, you just raise rents if you run into trouble or whatever. With low income housing, you can't do that. The whole idea is to keep rents at a stable level. So um, so there's a huge amount of money that's interested in market rate housing because everybody wants to invest in a project that's gonna make money. Affordable housing, you need this subsidy, this low income housing subsidy, and usually you also have to have subsidy from a local municipality or a foundation or somebody else who's willing to say, "Gosh, affordable housing is really important to us. We're going to put some of our money into it." And but that money is sort of limited. It's $10 billion nationwide, which sounds like a lot of money, but if you divide that by 50, it's not very much money compared to the billions of dollars which are out there eager to put money into market rate housing. Um, that program was started in really, let's say 1993. So there's a there is a 30-year compliance period for those units that are built with low-income housing tax credits. So a unit built in 1993 is now 30 years old, which means that whoever owns that building can now sell it and not maintain low-income housing, no, low-income prices for housing. So they can sell it to a private developer who can take it over and most likely is going to raise rents to be able to earn more on it. And that is making it harder. That may push people out of that housing because it's too expensive all of a sudden. But that's happening at a very big scale now. There are thousands of units every year now in Durham that are no longer required to be compliant with LIHTC, low income housing tax credit rules. And so they're coming off the affordable rolls, but they're not being replaced quickly enough. So that's a big issue as well. And we have an aging housing stock. So there are two kinds of affordable housing. There's the new housing you build, um, and then there's what's called NOAH or naturally occurring affordable housing, and that's housing that is already in the housing stock, already part of the housing stock, and for whatever reason, because it's not quite as high quality or it is, um, has an owner who just wants to offer lower rents. It's affordable for people, and a lot of those are also aging out of this compliance period. So that naturally occurring affordable housing is sort of disappearing. And if you own a kind of a ramshackle apartment building, multifamily apartment building, And everywhere you look, there are private equity funds and investors who want to buy apartment buildings. It's pretty attractive to
Pretty
sell an
incentivizing.
apartment building that you and make a lot of money on it, and you walk away with money, and the private equity fund gets this asset. But the renters pay the price because they can't afford the new rents. So there are lots of factors, but I think some of those are some of the main ones.
Gotcha. No, I've done a lot of research on like the low income tax credit and everything, but
Yeah.
like, and I know about the 30-year rule, but quickly, do you think is it possible for, let's say I own like an apartment building and it was designated low income. After the
hmm
30 years, I could just, if I had another LLC or something, just sell it to the other LLC, correct? Like, and still have the same owner, or does it have to be a transfer of,
hmm
yeah, that's
Oh,
probably
that's a
what
good
I have.
question. I think you could probably sell it to you could probably sell it to an LLC. You also could just keep owning it and but not be required to meet those affordability requirements. So,
Gotcha.
you would probably sell it if you could earn a profit on that. If someone else would buy it thinking, gosh, I can either renovate it or upgrade it and earn more money, or I care about affordable housing and I'll fix it up and keep it affordable. That's certainly happens some too.
Gotcha. What would you say the zoning regulations in Durham, what factor does that play into
How
this?
does that play? Yeah, I mean, in North Carolina, your municipalities are not allowed to practice what's called inclusionary zoning. So you can't, for example, say to a for-profit developer, um, we will change your zoning so you can build 100 units of multifamily housing. Um, Durham is not allowed to say, uh, we're going to change the zoning so you can do that, but you have to include 20 units of housing that are affordable to people who make 60% of the area median income or less. So the local governments have no ability to force private developers to include affordable units in their development. So that's a major issue. Other states do have inclusionary zoning. Other states and cities will implement rent control to keep control on rents. So there are lots of different governmental tools. We don't have the use of any of those in North Carolina, and that's because the General Assembly in its wisdom, has um, decided that that's just not the way it wants the state to run. Um, so in a sense, the city is kind of hamstrung in terms of, from a public policy perspective, you would say, wow, it's really important for everybody to have affordable housing, but the city really doesn't have a lot of tools in its tool belt to address that. So what you'll see in the papers a lot is, a developer is approved for a zoning change, and then the city and the developer sit down to sort of, or the city council will be in session and being asked to approve this development, and there will be sort of a side conversation, and the developer will say, or the city will ask, uh, we'd really like to approve this zoning, but it sure would help if you would do something for our affordable housing problem. And so the developer will say, well, I'll offer, 5 units or 10 units in this 150 or 200 unit thing, or I'll make $100,000 contribution to the affordable housing loan fund that the city has. And then the council says, okay, that's sort of what we can do. We've gotten a proffer from the developer. It's called a proffer, to do 5 units, 10 units, whatever it is. And we've also gotten this money for the Affordable Housing Loan Fund, which the city controls and can use for affordable housing. And so we'll approve this development. And that helps a little bit. But one of the things that's true about a lot of those proffers is that they're not there's no 30-year period on them. They're only in effect for a year or 5 years, and the city has to manage and oversee all of those. So there's a cost that goes to the city. So I think that's the main impact that zoning has, is that Durham really doesn't have any zoning that allows you to require affordable housing. Um, and that's why what CAN's strategy has been to, in those instances where the city has control of the land, um, to advocate for and pressure the city and county of Durham to build affordable housing on that land, because um, it is the city's property. The city council and the county commission they've been elected by a constituency that wants affordable housing, and so there's more of a lever for community organizations like Durham Can to get affordable housing built on those properties. So that's been Can's strategy, to increase the stock of affordable housing in Durham. And you asked about sort of some successes. So um, in Hayti, which is the historically Black community, there was a housing project called Fayetteville Street Projects, I believe, and it decayed to the point that 20, 25 years ago, it was just torn down, and it's a 20-acre site. You've seen it, overgrown. It's a place where prostitution and drug dealing and all kinds of bad things happen right in the neighborhood that it was supposed to
Oh,
house.
I saw somebody
So,
was
so
smoking crack right in front of me yesterday.
yeah, yeah,
With a
yeah. It's
machete and an
no.
axe beside a fire. So it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, if you live on Grant Street right there, or your kids go to school at W.G. Pearson, that is not, that's not who you want as your neighbors. So Can advocated for the city and the property was sold to a developer in Philadelphia at some point by the Durham Housing Authority, which wouldn't or couldn't rebuild it. And that developer said, great, we'll use this land to build housing for NC NC Central students. And so they owned this land, but they sat on it for like 10 years and nothing happened at all. And so Can advocated for the city to give the housing authority $5 million to be able to buy that property back from this Philadelphia developer, which the housing authority did. So that put the land back in the control of the housing authority, and the housing authority has now entered into a development proposal agreement with F7, and they're going to build housing on that property. One thing that's happened in the last 10 or 15 years is that people have looked at traditional public housing and have said, it really doesn't make sense to put lots of people with low wealth and no income and few job prospects and few social prospects together, because it just creates a situation where you've got lots of crime, you've got lots of delinquencies, et cetera. And so most housing that gets built now that's affordable is mixed income. So there might be some units that are available for a family of four that makes $100,000, and there might be some available for that would be 60% AMI in Durham. There might be some that are at 80%. There might be some that are at 30%. So it's a mixed income community. And that's what will be built at what will be called the villages at Fayette Place. And that's what the Housing Authority is doing in all of its every facility that it is, every apartment complex that it's renovating. It's creating mixed income communities, and that's great. If it indeed helps. What it means is that there are fewer where you might have had 500 affordable units at 60% AMI. Now you've got 300 affordable units at 60% AMI, and you've got 200 market rate units. So you may have a better, more balanced community. but you don't have as many units. So, so that's what's going to happen at Fayette Place, which is great. And one thing to notice about it is that CAN started advocating around Fayette Place in right when I started getting involved, which was probably 2017, and here it is it'll be 2026 when the first ground gets broken. So it takes a long time to develop anything. It takes an even longer time to develop affordable housing because you have lots of different constituents and um, parties at play, right? It's just more complicated. You need subsidy from somebody, from the city, from LIHTC investments, et cetera. So it takes a long time. So so Hayti is definitely one place where Candace had success. The county is building affordable housing on two sites on East Main Street, 300 East Main and 500 East Main. And you can actually go see those. And that's been a public-private partnership between a developer called Laurel Street, which specializes in affordable housing, and the county. The county wanted to build a parking deck because they had a new social services building and a new police station. There's a new police station. So there was an incentive for the county to build a parking deck. And so what has ended up happening is that Laurel Street has done the development of the affordable housing. And that housing is wrapped around this parking deck that the county built. So that helped pay for the development. So that's something that the CAN advocated for. Right above um, the transportation hub, the the bus station in Durham, and the Amtrak station, and where all the transportation modalities come together. We at CAN advocated for the city to use city-owned land right there to build 150 units of affordable housing. So those developments are called Willard Street and Ashton Place. Some is for seniors, some is for just low income families at 60% AMI, and some at 30% AMI. And so that's another instance where, because the city owned the land and had an interest in providing affordable housing is particularly good when it's close to public transportation. Because one thing that happens if you don't have a lot of money and you may not be able to afford a car, you have to use public transportation. And so that's an ideal spot for for affordable housing. So that's certainly been a success. The 505 West Chapel Hill Street that we've talked about has now gone through three iterations looking of what's called a request for proposal from developers since 2017. And the city has put out a request for proposal saying, hey, developers, come and tell us what you would do to build really three different components. One is office space, secondly, or lab space, secondly, market rate housing, and thirdly, affordable housing. And we also want some green space on that site. And for various reasons, that the first two RFPs didn't result in a developer being chosen. Well, a developer was chosen the first time, and then COVID happened, and so the developer wanted the city to basically give the property to the developer for free, and the city said no thanks. The second RFP didn't result in a developer being chosen by the council, and the new council came in and said, let's do this again. And so the new council wanted uh, 200,000 square feet of office space and potentially a luxury hotel and market rate housing units and affordable housing and green space on that property. And just from listing all that stuff, you can see that it was the developers, sort of scratch their heads, what does the city really want? And five developers were invited, and two of them ended up not even applying because they were confused. And while this was happening, we were making the case that the office market, 200,000 square feet of office space there's an awful lot to build in a city where there's already a lot of Class A office space. Um, the market for market rate housing was slowing down because so much had been built in Durham, and so those two components really didn't make sense all of a sudden. And the developer that was chosen ended up saying, "We can build this for you, but it'll take $70 million of city subsidy to do that." And that was a non-starter for Durham. So it's fallen through again, and now we're advocating to go ahead and at least build the affordable housing piece. The interesting thing about affordable housing is that when the private markets for housing, um, whether they're up or down, it's still a good time to build affordable housing, and it's particularly good when the markets are down because contractors are available and there's less demand for subcontractors. You can get projects started and done more quickly, and this low-income housing tax credit, which is really key to building new housing. Um, Arrives whether the market's in a good place or not, and it might actually go up because there's a drop in the private market. So a bad market like we're in right now in Durham is a good time to build affordable housing. So we're saying, look, we don't want to try to develop, it doesn't make sense for the city to try to develop this whole piece of property with all kinds of bells and whistles on it, fancy housing, luxury hotel, office space, but we know there's a critical need for affordable housing. So let's go ahead and build that and then see what happens with, those other markets. If they come back, then great, then we'll use the rest of the site. So, the other strategies that CAN is looking at, which are still to need to bear fruit, when public schools are closed, let's say Lowe's Grove is an elementary school in Southeast Durham. It was closed for because a new school was built, and that property was owned by the public schools, and the public schools wanted to address this affordable housing issue. If you're a teacher or a maintenance worker in Durham or work in the cafeteria at a school, it's increasingly hard to live in the city where you work. And it's so you're serving people every day. You're a vital person in the community, but you can't live where you work. You have to live in Mebane or you have to live in Person County, or you have to live, so then you have to commute, and it's more expensive and it's inconvenient. It's just it doesn't seem right that you can't afford to live in the city where you're providing really key services to people. So Durham Public Schools said, wow, it sure would make sense to build some housing on this piece of property we have. We could build housing for teachers and they could work at other elementary schools or private schools, or, be the custodian at Durham School of the Arts, whatever. But again, the General Assembly has made it difficult to do that. And what we're working on right now is trying to understand why it's so hard legally to do that. But the General Assembly can preempt local governments from uh, building housing on public school land. Does that make sense? Not really, but that's the way the General Assembly is operating right now. So, um, Durham's representative to the General Assembly, Vernetta Alston, has introduced a bill to allow that to happen. And this past time, she had a co-sponsor who wanted to permit uh, uh, school systems in Western North Carolina, which have been really impacted by Helene, to do that. And so the bill got a little more traction, but still didn't pass. But that's another public land strategy that CAN is pursuing. And then most recently, we advocated for the city to change its zoning so that religious properties could build what are called ADUs, or accessory dwelling units on religious property, could build three or more instead of just one that might serve as a parsonage for the staff. So there's now an opportunity for religious institutions to build small houses essentially that could be used to house homeless people, or could house veterans, or could house seniors, or could house whatever the religious institution is interested, whatever population they're interested in serving, they can build small houses on their property to do that. So that's another opportunity. CAN is an organization of religious institutions. And so we've pulled our institutions to find out who's interested, and we're working with other organizations around the city to try to help House of Worship figure out how to do that. Because houses of worship, they're not real estate developers. They have another purpose. But so if they want to build housing and have it managed and all that, it may be more than Duke Memorial can take on by itself, and they may need partners. So it's complicated. So those are the things that mainly that CAN has been focused on, is if we can't um, get private developers to build affordable units as part of their developments, then let's focus on public government, because we vote for them, and they have some accountability to us. And so typically what we'll do is hold a large assembly with 600 or 700 people in attendance and ask public officials, will you commit to fast track the development of affordable housing at 505 West Chapel Hill Street? And most of them say yes. And then it's our job to hold them accountable for that, which is, not always easy.
Not easy.
But that's been CAN's strategy to get more housing built.
Yeah.
So,
To promote the growth. I think you kind of just hit everything like through five, six, except seven. So
yeah, and I would just something about you had a question about developer collaboration, which is a really good question. And there are so there's lots of different kinds of developers. For the purposes of this discussion, there are developers that um, are very knowledgeable about how to use low-income housing tax credits or historic preservation tax credits. It's tricky. You have to apply to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. You need to know how to structure it. You need to be able to create a financial forecast that shows what the money coming in from the tax credits is going to do. Um, so it takes more work, and not every developer wants to do that. And so the our strategy has been to CAN strategy has been to work with Self-Help, which is a nonprofit bank in Durham that has an interest in affordability and affordable housing, and knows a lot about what's called structured finance, so kind of complicated structures for financing housing. And then with developers like the Downtown Housing Investment Corp, or DHIC, which has built thousands of units of affordable housing and really knows how to do LIHTC developers. So the developers you can collaborate with are those that really know that space, really know how to use tax credits and other methods to subsidize the cost of building affordable housing. Private developers usually only are going to do anything around affordability if the city, in these sort of conversations when zoning changes are going to happen, says, it'd really help us vote yes for this zoning change if you would offer, to do 10 affordable units or make a contribution in some way. So the developers that we can collaborate with or work with are those that are really knowledgeable about affordable housing, because it's almost a whole different industry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so far like complex once you start getting into like all the mechanics. It's not just like buying a house. It's not just like
No, and it's,
it's built.
if you're a for-profit developer, you have, you've done it before, you know what you're doing, you can go to a bank and get a construction loan to build a multifamily building. And that's it. You pay the bank back with the rents. There's nothing simple about making money or managing a multifamily apartment building. It takes a lot of work and you got to know what you're doing. But you presumably you know what you're doing. You know how to charge enough rent to be able to pay the bank back. And with affordable units, the rent that's generated by the tenants in the building is not enough to pay a bank back, with interest. And so you have to find these other sources of funding. For example, at Willard Street, Duke University, the city approached Duke University, and Duke University put $5 million into the Willard Street project, and that helped pay for parking and provide some of that subsidy. They also got a grant from a foundation, the A.J. Fletcher Foundation, and then the city put money into the project also. So um, you just have to deal with a whole nother world of subsidy and different funders rather than just going to Citibank and saying, give me $150 million for this project and I'll pay you back. So
Would you say Duke is doing enough as like that's what like
as an entity,
yeah.
yeah. Um, uh, I think personally I would say no,
Yeah,
and I
me
think
too.
Can would say no as well, for a couple of reasons. One, Duke employs 38,000 people in Durham. They're by far the biggest employer, and as such, they have a lot of impact on the housing market. And um, grad students, for example, there are 5,000 grad students at Duke. When they come to Duke, they need to find housing. And so that's 5,000 people who are looking for housing in Durham. They're using the housing stock, um, and making it harder for Durham residents to get that housing stock. So Duke has
Mhm.
been buying. Go ahead. Were you
No,
going to say
I
something?
I was gonna because I just ran into this experience where like during the times of move-in where we have the market rate rent,
Yeah,
it'll go from 1,100 in October to like if you have to move in August, well, it's going to jump to 15. So you're
sure.
going to sign that lease for $1,500 a month
Yeah.
versus waiting another month and then you're only paying 1,100 or 1,200 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Or
that's
and less deposit probably. And
yes.
then there's
Mhm.
incentives we'll give you the first month free and rent.
Now we're
So,
doing like 3 months free and everything, and it's like,
yeah. Yeah. So those, that certainly puts pressure on the market and bumps up rates. And so, the other thing that's true is that Duke, employs an awful lot of people who can't afford market rate housing in Durham. So, um, nurses assistants and certified nurses assistants and maintenance workers and bus drivers and custodians and all those folks. An awful lot of people in Durham pay more than 30% of their income in rent. Not even talking about buying a house, but just in rent. And the government and people who do credit counseling and the like will tell you that you shouldn't pay more than your 30% of your income for where you live. So there's an awful lot of people who work at Duke who are challenged to live in Durham and pay rent or own a house. And many, many more who don't even try, and but they live in Mebane or what we were talking about before, Person County or Henderson or who knows where, and have to commute in. Um, so our thinking is that, gosh, if I were Duke and I were really interested in in attracting the best nurses and the best certified nurses assistants and PAs and maintenance crew, people who are really going to be loyal to Duke and stay a long time and not require a lot of extra training or not a lot of churn. Wouldn't it make sense to provide workforce housing for those folks? And Duke has an enormous piece of property, about a 20-acre piece of property between West Campus and East Campus. It's called Central Campus that is just lying fallow, and it's used for parking. And I think the Duke Police Station is on that property. But that would be a fantastic place to build. They could build thousands of units of workforce housing. People could walk from there to the hospital. They could walk to Duke very, very easily. So, um, and because Duke is such a big employer, it, has a lot to do with, um, it puts pressure on the housing system in Durham. So, uh, Duke could definitely do more to support affordable housing. And I think a lot of it would be very much in its own self-interest. So Duke has put, I think, $3 million, maybe $5 million into, an affordable housing fund that self-help manages, and they're we hope that they will put more in. And when they put in a loan or a grant like that, that the fund can go out and borrow other monies and use that so it can be leveraged and it can grow. Um, but I would say in general, there's a lot more they could be doing. They have suffered under this administration because they've lost lots of grant income, and it's a hard time to be Duke University. So it's not a great time for them to try to put to have a lot of extra money lying around that they could put into housing. But they also have, it's an $11 billion endowment, I think, which
Mm.
generates a lot of money. So
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, yes, they could certainly be doing more. And in my opinion, they should be doing more.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Like walking around and talking with some of the staff members and everything, like you can just feel that they are not easy about like it's like they're forced to have to be there,
Mm,
and it sucks. Like I know like all the movements going that they're trying to do to, get more, get more wages, get higher wages and stuff.
yep.
But
Yep.
it's just not working out as they want it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's making
There's,
headway, but not not where it needs to be
yeah,
to
that's right.
combat this problem.
That's right, for sure. And that you can think about um, housing and affordable housing in two ways. One is that there's not enough of it and the rents are too high. The other way to think about it is that people aren't paid enough to afford it. And so often the argument that you'll hear affordable housing advocates make is, look, if you're not going to pay city workers a living wage, then at least provide housing that's, affordable at the wages that you are able to pay. So it's a and I think that's a perfectly logical argument. And um,
Yeah.
it's a matter of resources. The one thing I would say that, I think what we often usually look to government to solve affordable housing issues. And in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, a fund has been created that is $150 million, and it's totally focused on affordable housing. Um, Facebook, Meta, put $100 million into that fund. And why would they do that? Well, because they realize that the high salaries that they pay puts pressure on the local markets, um, and they want to do their part to make sure there's affordable housing in the Bay Area. Durham passed a $95 million bond issue a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and a lot of that money's being used to renovate DHA properties and build some housing. Um, but that was an enormous effort for the city to get voters to approve $95 million. Facebook wrote a check for $100 million just like that. And if you look at their financial statements, they could write a lot of those checks. And so I think one way that we can make some progress with affordable housing in Durham is to ask those corporations, those big companies, which have a huge impact on our housing, to recognize that and step up and help fund an effort to keep housing affordable um, for all of Durham, because they're having a big impact on Durham and making it unaffordable for lots of people. So, they're making very good money, very good bank on their work. put some more, let's put some of that back into the community. And that's, you know, Duke is essentially a private institution, also a big employer. And so it's the same kind of approach is to say to Duke University, look, you have an $11 billion endowment, you employ 38,000 people, you put a lot of pressure on, on the housing market. Step up, help us keep it affordable, help your workers afford to live in Durham. So I think rather than just relying on public um, public entities, the city, the county, the federal government, none of which have enough money to, address the housing crisis that we're in. Let's also look at the private sector and other entities that um, not just should, but it's not a question of largesse for me or of generosity. They are they are creating the problem, and so they're they don't set out to create a housing problem, but they do, and so as part of their cost of doing business, it seems incumbent on them to um, help address that issue. And it's good, it's good for their workers. It's good for their public image. It makes business sense, I would argue anyways. So
Yeah, no. I I've been walking around campus. I've been like talking to like staff members and everything, and just, trying to ask them about, lifestyle and, where do you live without just directly going up to them. Where do
yeah,
you live?
yeah,
And what you said, they're not staying in Durham. And if they are staying in Durham, it's the bad parts of Durham where they don't want to live, but they're
right,
forced to live
right.
in. Uh,
Yep.
I was walking by a charter school yesterday. It was a K through 8 charter school. And I, I think it was Will, no, some,
Was it near Fayette Place?
no, it's in North Durham.
North Durham. Hmm.
Yeah. And I was walking down the trail and was told to go here, and because this used to be like really busy area and stuff. And I'm walking down the trail. I've just gotten off the street from the charter school, and there is like trash everywhere. I see a tent, like a homeless guy in a tent and
Hmm.
everything. And I'm like, where is the investment? Like the investment needs to be put back into this community. I don't understand how we can leave so much area like un untouched by like
Hmm. Investment.
construction. Yeah, and
Yeah,
just
by investment, sure.
yeah. And
Yeah,
but I can't fathom that right now.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, another, really interesting part about all of this is that um, our federal government, starting in the 1930s, exacerbated the problem. And going back, there's uh, particularly with the black population, the Housing Finance Agency did what's called redlining, and they would
Mhm.
draw a line around a black neighborhood and say, "Oh, these are bad credit risks. Don't make loans in this area," and that would be the advice they would give to banks. And so, when you don't invest, when you don't allow people to buy homes, then that neighborhood, goes down. And so our public policies have had an impact on communities of color and particularly on black families and black communities. Hayti is a great example, right? The decision was made to we got to build a new freeway, or we think we need to build a new freeway. Let's run it right through, the black business district, and that was a public decision. And the folks who lived in that neighborhood did not have enough power to push back and make that not happen. So that's, in a sense, that's what CAN tries to do is to give ordinary folks, black, white, poor, wealthy, Republican, Democrat, Catholic, whatever, a chance to work together to have power to be able to resist moves like that, which are sort of patently unfair and are going to have tremendous consequences for their neighborhoods. So, but the whole history of the federal government and how, and state governments, et cetera, just trickles down, have gone out of their way really to damage Black communities and African American communities is pretty striking. And so, anyways, but that's another course and another
No, like
another
they've been
discussion.
doing that. One of the like cornerstones in like housing affordability that we talk about is like the 2008 financial crisis
Yeah.
and or that financial housing, all of it. And but Durham's been doing this long before even that, and it's just been
Hmm.
exacerbated way more since that point.
Yep.
Um, when I was walking through Hayti yesterday, and this is tying into the last question, I kept seeing like I saw the Black Business District, took pictures of it, it abandoned, like gated up and everything. And then you walk down the street and there's a Rite Aid that's gated up, and then there's a KFC right beside of that. And then if you go to the next side over, there's a Taxes R Us, a Wings place, a hair
Hmm.
place, and the ABC store.
Hmm.
It's like, why would you limit like businesses from why would you limit business in an area that needs to be improved if allowing them to work and have resource they have nothing over there like that. I don't they're not allowed, they're put in a position where it's hard for them to advance out of poverty given like where they are, no housing, no business, no nothing, so it's just crime, like you said, prostitution
Right.
around that area. What other economic benefits or what other economic benefits would there be from these affordable housing initiatives that CAN is going through?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is the Black community and the low-income community is not homogenous, and so companies make decisions. Rite Aid, in that instance, makes a decision that it has certain profit margins that it wants to make, and if it's not making that at that site, they close the business. It's why you don't see a lot of grocery stores in downtown neighborhoods. Grocery is a very difficult business. You make 3 cents on every dollar that you sell. And if the neighborhood around you doesn't have people who have money to buy groceries with or enough, you can't keep your grocery store open. So those businesses are closing because, generally speaking, there's not enough purchasing power in the neighborhood around them. So, uh, I think that's important to keep in mind because it's not the I wouldn't say it's the fault of the people living in the neighborhood. It's the fact that they're not
Yeah.
paid enough to support
Yeah.
to support businesses, and those businesses want to make a profit, and they make decisions all the time about where they want to do that, how much they want to work hard to make that work. So uh but housing and housing construction is an enormous driver in the U.S. economy. Enormous. It's, I don't know. I'm not an economist, so I don't know how big, but it is a major piece. And when there's a housing downturn, as you know, lots of people are unemployed. Contractors go out of business. They can't pay their bills because they're not bringing any income in. So building housing is a good thing, period. Um, it employs people. It creates demand for raw materials, for lumber, for steel, for all those things. It's a big driver in the economy. And so if you hire people from the neighborhood where something is being built, then it can have a nice virtuous circular effect that you're building housing, you're creating safe, clean, and affordable places for people to live. And they're also, they've got a good job. They're learning skills. They're able to go to Rite Aid or go wherever and buy things as well. So it's a huge economic driver, and it's just a question of um, and there's, there's two pieces to that. You could argue that building any housing is a good, is a good thing. It employs people. Um, Often what happens is, and there are government programs to try to combat this that are called minority business enterprise efforts. So, or sort of purchasing programs. Uh, a business does the most good in a neighborhood if it employs the people in that neighborhood to do the work, and often that's not what happens. A big construction company will bring folks in who have the skills that are needed to do the building. So that this is, where the issue sort of ripples out. So are people trained to be a mason? Are they trained to be an electrician? Do they live in that neighborhood? And so the effort it can be particularly good to build affordable housing if it's employing people in the neighborhood to do that. And you'll hear about efforts to make that happen. And so there's governments in particular um, have a particular focus on that. So I don't know what percentage of the contractors, for example, at the villages at Fayette Place are going to be, but my guess is it's a pretty high percentage are slated to be minority-owned contractors. So that one of one of the best a bet one of a good way usually to build wealth is to own a business. And so uh, if you're black and you own a electrician, if you own an electrical company, you're going to build wealth for yourself. You're also going to provide good employment for people who work for you. And so employing and giving work to minority-owned businesses is one way that building affordable housing can be most effective, I would argue. So, but it's a huge driver of economic activity. So
It's such a wide-ranging topic. Like there,
it
you can
is,
go
it's
into
huge.
so many like minute details of okay, no, you can hit developers or you can hit economy or you can hit, individual level or you can hit there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
a lot of
Where are you taking where are you taking the course?
uh what do you mean? At school?
Yeah,
It's 890 at Duke.
at Duke. Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Great.
This is my first semester and I'm almost finished.
Congratulations.
But yeah, no, it's been very, very
Who's your professor?
uh Vicky Bogan.
Huh.
Are you familiar with her?
No, but
She
it sounds like a
she
great class that she's teaching.
she taught for 19 years at Cornell. She is actually our department head. So we have
Nice.
like three different programs in my school, and she's the head of everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Which school where are you? Which school?
Sanford School of
Oh,
Public
good.
Policy.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And so she's done countless like s- I'm sorry, somebody just
Sorry.
pulled up. Yeah, she's done countless studies and everything surrounding housing. So
Great.
yeah,
Good.
but anyway, but yeah, I just wanted to say yeah, thank you again for doing this, and
You're welcome. Yeah.
I'm
I'm
definitely gonna
glad
send
you're
this.
glad you're digging into it. It's fascinating, and uh we need people who are paying attention to it and care about it. And I hope that'll be one outcome for you coming out of the course. So anyways.
Anyway, well, I'll definitely let you know how it ends up, and I'll send you a copy of it, and
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah. Yeah, please do.
okay,
And I think you'll be able to access the AI companion document, but I'll make sure and send it to you just so you've got,
perfect.
yeah, and then you'll have
Yeah,
those. It does a pretty good job of taking notes.